Hey everybody, welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to go over layer stacking, opacity, and blending modes in Adobe After Effects. We've already learned about compositions as a collection of separate layers. The order of those layers, their transparency, and how all of the different layers interact can completely influence your final design. In this video, we're going to explore layer stacking, visibility, opacity, and a lot of different common blending modes you might use in your motion design. Layers in After Effects are typically arranged in a stack in your Layers panel. I have this starting file here with various types of layers that I've dragged from my project window down to my Layers panel. Layers near the top of the timeline will appear first and in front from the layers beneath the timeline. The stacking order is also called the render order. After Effects actually calculates the layers from bottom upward to create the final composite. Layers can be controlled in a bunch of different ways. As you can see, I can turn on my eyeball or off my eyeball on a respective layer to reveal it. Now, the reason we can't see all of the different layers at once is because the layers essentially are covering one another. So if I look inside where the time slider or the current time indicator is, you're going to notice these different bars here at the bottom. Now, these will affect your layer in and out point. The longer the bar is, as you can see, this one covers the entire composition and timeline, you're going to have this dust appear throughout the composition. Much like my work area, if I left click and drag a corner of that composition, a corner of that layer, you're going to notice once that little bar ends, the layer is no longer visible. And much like when we did work area in a previous video, you can see that I can move that layer to be anywhere that I feel I want to put it. I'm going to undo that real quick and let's talk a little bit more of how we can visually organize these further. As I pull down a layer, it's essentially making a copy or an instance of the layer in the project panel. For instance, the way to say that is I can keep dragging the dust layer in over and over and over again, and these will act as individual layers that are not connected with one another. I can also hit delete on the layer as well. If you have multiple layers, you can actually name them differently in the timeline. Just like we name in the project window, I can go ahead and click on a layer and call it dust image and hit return, and it doesn't change the layer name, but it changes the way the layer is shown and the name that is in the timeline itself. Now, what I like to do is usually name my footage that way, and I also apply a label to specific types of footage. For instance, if I have a lot of images, maybe I'll make those yellow. And so you can see I have a kind of a light leak image here. If I go down to light leak and turn on that, you can see that. Maybe I want to label that yellow, and I'm just left clicking to make these yellow, and that makes all of these elements yellow as well. So you can kind of see now that the transform box is yellow, but if I pick something that is more lavender, the lavender color will come up. So labels are a really great way to organize this. Maybe all our video footage we're going to just organize as green, just to, you can pick any color you really want. And I'm going to change that image to yellow. Now you can kind of see we have a more organized timeline. I can also go to the layers and say drops in the rain, forest image, and I can change these as I see fit. If I click on the word layer name, I can still see the source name and I can cycle through with just a left mouse click. Another important factor when dealing with a lot of layers is we can solo the layers. So if I just want to see that forest image, but I don't want to painstakingly take off all of the eyeballs, I can go ahead and click on that layer and solo it just so I can see the layer I'm soloing. For instance, you can do this on really any layer just to see that specific footage and then click it again to unsolo it. In previous lessons, we've locked our layers, so you can left click and drag to lock and close them. So a lot of layer management. Now, if we ever want to adjust the layers, we just click with the left mouse button, drag, and rearrange the layer stack. This is something, if you take the ACP exam, you're most likely going to need to do. But the next step is really thinking about how we blend these together. So, we can blend things in multiple ways. We can blend through different blending modes like we would in Photoshop or Illustrator, and that's really the first place that I would start the blending process. The issue is you may not see the blending modes right here in the timeline right away. And there's a reason for that. If you go to the very bottom of your timeline, you're going to see a few different buttons. And these are the expand and collapse switches or settings, essentially, in which you can expand and collapse various settings throughout, almost like render time. But if you click this second little button, it looks like a square and a circle, that's going to open up the switch for blending mode. This is where we can really create some powerful imagery. Let's play with this. Just like in Photoshop, I can click on that switch and I can go and say, maybe we're going to hit a multiply on this, or we can hit a screen, right? As soon as we hit a screen, you can see we have some transparency happening, which is nice. We can go to the dust layer and maybe we can hit a color dodge. As you can see now, layers are blending together. Our light leak layer, that's this one right here. Maybe we hit that with a screen as well. And if something's too intense, you can play with the settings or hit T on your keyboard, get the opacity, and just adjust subtly. That's the great part about blending modes, is we can really get a lot of nice mixing throughout the elements. Finally, we have that forest, which we can see, and we have the drops in the rain. And we don't have to have all our layers the length of the composition. In certain times, maybe we want to have the, this lovely raindrop scene transition a little bit into this lovely forest image. That's when we can move the layer in and out points and kind of overlap them as we see fit. Right now, you just have that kind of image of the forest, and then eventually, because I didn't really make any keyframes, it's going to transition very sharply into that video of the rain. Now, I can blend these pretty simply. I can add keyframes here with the opacity. If I go to forest and hit T, like we learned in our other video, we can kind of set a keyframe for 100%, move the cursor, move it down, and then now we'll get a nice transition. The great part about this is we're not deleting anything. We can still drag and move and adjust our different settings. This will just allow us, again, a bit smoother of a transition and a blend as we see fit. I can even go in here and go through the different layers, and maybe we add a multiply. If we want to see them kind of really blend on top of each other, we can do that as we see fit. And this is really a great starting point for any artist that is learning motion design. Being able to kind of seamlessly overlay or blend or adjust different imagery gives us really free rein to make some really nice motion design. And even though we haven't gotten into intense kind of shapes and graphic design principles just yet, you can see that like we're getting a lot more interesting composition. Just to build off of that, we are not limited to video or to imagery. We can actually go up to our shape tool. And we're not going to dive deep into this, but I just want to show you, if I go up into the shape tool, for instance, deselect my layers, that's just clicking with the left mouse button, kind of in this gray area, getting a shape and drawing it out. Shapes also have that various blending mode as well. You can see we can really start to kind of add some nice artistic elements to our scenes. Maybe we want to have kind of a split view here, right? That we're really getting some cool elements within. So again, you can pull in shapes, we can animate any of these. The idea though is we are building essentially a collage with the elements that we are creating. In closing, you can see that the layer stack and the order that it's in is really important to help build that visualization that you're trying to make. And before we add any different types of effects and things like that, having your layer stack organized, having the different color labels, and making sure that you know what you're clicking on depending, and the modes that you have available, is going to give you that great baseline for a cool design project. In our next video, we're going to dive into layers a little further, and we're going to talk about Photoshop and Illustrator artwork and really how to prepare those assets for After Effects. Go ahead, play with some blending modes. Feel free to use this starting file, and I'll see you in the next video.